G'day, this is Mark from No Nonsense Bass. I'm the real bass player giving honest reviews about bass gear, and today I'm reviewing the BackBeat. This is a personal, portable, wearable subwoofer, and I've had this for probably 2 or 3 months now, and I've got a bit of a funny relationship with it because I love it. There's a lot of things about this that I really love. But it's got a reasonably long list of things that are probably not quite right. Now, in its defense, a lot of those things are inherent with the design. Okay, so the only way to eliminate these is to not have it. They're the sort of design flaws that just there is no workaround, and I'll explain a few of those. But there probably are a few things about it that they maybe could have engineered differently, and it might have made for a better final product. So let me tell you some of the features first of all. It basically has a subwoofer inside it. I'm pretty sure it's actually got some sort of speaker. Okay, when I first bought it, I actually was expecting that it would just have some sort of vibrating mechanism or something like that. But I actually believe it's got a speaker in there because you can hear a little bit of pitch come through it. And even when it's strapped to your body, you can actually feel that pitch resonate through your bones. I'm not making that up. I'm not joking when I say that you actually feel, much like when you are standing on a stage and you're feeling the bass vibrating and the frequencies coming up through the floor, this you can feel the frequencies coming through your back. And it honestly, I do think that it does deliver on its promise of giving you that big stadium stage sort of feel, because I really enjoy having it there, and I can play with my amp at very low volumes and still have that big sound and big feel, essentially resonating through my body. It's crazy. But it's got 2 knobs on here. One is for controlling the amount of vibration, and the other one is basically a volume knob for the headphone output or the in-ear monitoring output. And it clips onto your strap. So it's got these 2 large, very strong metal clips. Now these, I've got no doubts about this, I've got no concerns about this coming off my strap. These clips are tight as, and the reason I'm demoing it on my strap is because it's really hard to get on and off. And that is for the most part a good thing, you don't have to worry about it coming off. But you should be aware that it's not the sort of thing that you can just put it on, take it off, as much as you want to. It's not the sort of thing that you'd be putting on at the start of a gig and taking it off at the end of every gig. Really, for me, once it's on there now, it's there to stay. And so pretty much if I want to play without it, I would use a different strap, really, because it's just too much work to keep getting it on and off. So yeah, it's got those 2 volume knobs. It's got the on and off switch here. It's got an indicator on the side that tells you whether it is on. That turns green, I believe, when it's charging. On top, this black one is where you connect to your bass. So this is basically an input receiver socket, and the red one is what you would put either your guitar lead. For me, it runs to a wireless transmitter. Okay, so this is basically you run from the bass into here, then out from here to your pedal board or your effects or your wireless, whatever it is from there. These 2, the one on the outer edge, the smaller socket here, is for plugging either headphones or in-ear monitors into, and the other one is an input. I'm pretty sure that's the input. I haven't used it, but I believe that's where if you were running an in-ear monitoring system, you'd be using this one perhaps instead of that one. So look, so those are the features on there, and one of these knobs basically, I may have called it a volume knob, but it's more of a sensitivity knob, I suppose. So you can crank it up to get as much vibration, and it can be like really compressed and really sensitive that even the lightest touch will cause this thing to buzz out. Or you can dial it right back if you just want a really subtle, discrete level of backbeat goodness going through there. So what is it that I love and what is it that I don't love about it? Like I said earlier, the stuff that I love about it is that I honestly do think that it does deliver on its promise of giving you that big stage sound. So that's a really big tick. And I guess I don't really have a whole lot more to add on what's to love about it, because that's what you get it for. Okay, they make this promise about it. It gives you that, that big, the big stage vibration through your feet. It does come through your back instead, but really I do think it's quite authentic. Like it's not made up, and it's like it does a really good job. So it actually is a clear success in giving you that feel. And that's really helpful for moderating your volume on stage. You know, sound engineers are often complaining about there's too much bass and it's making their job a bit too hard. I was even talking about this with a sound engineer who was thinking he was actually contemplating getting one and adding it to his kit so that if he's ever got a bass player that he's struggling to convince him to turn it down, he can just get him to strap one of these on. But then I told him how much it cost me. He was like, oh, I don't think I really want it that bad. So I guess that's the main positive. It really honestly does deliver on its promise. But it does lead me into a few sort of negatives. I suppose, look, the fact that it's rechargeable and it's wireless, basically when it's on your back, that's another positive. You know, you don't have to have it permanently plugged into power. But if I talk about some of its limitations, perhaps, you know, they're not really negatives, most of them. But a lot of them are inherent with the design. Now, one of the things to be aware of, like with the way that I run this, I run from my bass into the input and then out from there into my wireless. And then I've got the wireless receiver is down on my pedal board. And from there, it then runs through my effects and off back into the amp. So what that means is that this is at the very start of the signal chain. And that basically means that it's not... in my setup, the BackBeat isn't getting any of the effects coming through it. Okay, so it's only ever going to be a clean sound. So if I step on a distortion pedal, which is going to raise the gain and you know, compress the sound of the bass, well, this is still only going to be reacting to my clean tone. And if I use a delay, which is going to have my bass repeating, you know, over again, this is not going to reflect that. It's just going to reflect the unaffected sound. And look, with the sort of gigs I do, that's no issue whatsoever for me. It doesn't bother me in the least. But if you're someone who really relies on, say, some sort of special delay effect, then that setup's not going to work all that well. You know, if you use delay as like a part of your rhythmic pattern and it's a real feature of your bass line, it's not going to work quite as well. The way you can get around that, though, if you were to use this as part of an in-ear monitoring setup, because I don't run in-ears, I just use my bass amp and a pretty traditional, you know, standard sort of live setup. But if you were running in-ear monitors and you had your affected bass tone coming through your in-ears, well then, you know, basically what you'd probably be doing there is running from your bass to your wireless, then through your effects, and then into your in-ear monitoring rig. And then you would be getting the affected signal coming back to your in-ears belt pack and then running that into this. It's a complex setup, but it would work. And that would get this working, you know, perfectly as far as the effects are concerned. So that's just one of the considerations on that. So I mentioned earlier that it's wireless and it's battery powered, which is a good thing. But the negative side of that is that they send out their own charger that's even branded with the BackBeat logo. Now this, I believe, is 14-volt AC. Now, I mean, who's got a 14-volt AC charger sitting in their gig bag? Probably no one. So I'm not quite sure what the logic was behind there. Maybe there's some sort of engineering reason why it just had to be that way. But I would have loved it if it could charge off a 9 volts, so you could just use your one spot or your whatever power supply you use on your pedal board. That would be really handy. Or even USB charging. A lot of stuff. My wireless transmitter is USB chargeable. It's a bit slower, but that doesn't bother me. And that would be nice. I mean, there was a little while ago where I'd used it at a gig on one night, and then I had a gig the very next night, and I realized I forgot to charge it in between gigs. And I didn't bring the charger to the second gig. So there I was, and my BackBeat had already done one gig where we did 2 hours of music plus a sound check. So I had done probably 2.5 hours worth of work. And I wasn't sure if it was going to make it through the second gig where we were doing about 3 hours worth of music. So I was a bit unsettled, you know, wondering, is it going to make it through the gig? And I was wishing that I could have charged it, you know, between sets, but it wasn't possible. So I'd love it if future versions of it were used more standard charging options. The good news is that, by the way, that it did make it all the way through that second gig. So I was able to basically get between 5 and 6 hours out of it on a single charge. I did, however, back off on the sensitivity. I sort of dialed it down a little bit on that second gig in the hopes of extending its life and making sure I'd rather have it on a lower setting and get me through the whole gig. So the battery or the charging situation is not quite ideal. It does have an internal battery, and the battery is essentially non-replaceable. BackBeat has said on their website that maybe if they need to in the future, they might have a service where you can send it back. If the batteries fail, that you could send it back and they might replace it and send it back to you, which would hopefully be cheaper than buying a new one. But I mean, there's lots of devices out there that, use standard batteries, your cordless telephones, right, in your home. If that battery in that fails, you can go down to Battery World and get a replacement and off you go. This one, you can't quite do that. So if the battery does wear out, then we're reliant on the manufacturer to help us out. Keep in mind, though, I mean, they say that you get about 6 hours out of this, out of the factory, right? So when it's brand new, you should be able to use it for 6 hours straight. Now, over time, the battery will degrade, okay? It's going to lose it, okay? The more times it gets charged, the more times you use it, it is going to lose some of its life. But it's not. I don't expect that it's going to go from working perfectly to suddenly just failing. At one point, what you typically see is that its usable charge time will go down. So while it might be 6 hours at the start, well, there might come a time where it's only 4 hours that it's good for, and then only 3 hours. But I mean, there's not many of us who would be doing more than probably 2 or 3 hours of continuous performing, or at least, in a night, in a gig. So for me, typically it's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours worth of music at a gig. So anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it, but I just feel like it's something that it's got to be pointed out. One of the other negatives is that it's quite heavy, and it is good that it's very sturdy. Okay, it's got a really solid enclosure. But it adds quite a bit of weight, about half a kilo, 450 grams, I think it is. So that's half a kilo, maybe 1 pound approximately. So there's a lot of bass players who are doing everything they can to, change their tuners and reduce 50 grams or 100 grams off the total weight of their bass. And well, here you're attaching another half a kilo to your strap. So it's a noticeable amount of weight. When your bass only weighs 5 kilos, you're increasing the weight by 10 to 20% by putting this onto your strap. So it's not a light unit. And look, it took me a couple of gigs to get used to not whacking myself or my bass with it. So I know BackBeat makes this clear on their website. You've just got to be, a little bit cautious. But even though I was being careful, I still found the first 2-3 gigs that I did with it, it did whack into my bass, which I didn't like. I did cop it in the eyebrow another night. So you do have to be quite careful when you're taking it off and when you're putting it down on your stand. I do recommend using a guitar stand with it. You've really got to be extra careful, even more careful than you probably think you need to be. But now that I've been using it for a while, I have not had an issue. So it's not a big deal. Just be careful. Maybe everyone's got to whack themselves in their head once to have their lesson and then realize, okay, I've got to work on my technique. The clips that hold it in place, like I said, they're really strong. So a positive of it is that it's not going to come off. I have no concern about it coming off. But I guess it's sort of partly a negative, though, in that it does make it harder to get it on and off. I wonder if a future design might be that they could use these sort of clips, but perhaps also have magnets on the back of the clips as a separate sort of thing, quite strong magnets, which might make it easier to get it on and off, but who knows, maybe that's not ideal. It will damage your strap. I might even take it off towards the end and show you, but I can pretty confidently say that it's squishing this sort of foam strap, and when I do take it off, it's going to leave permanent marks, kind of like your furniture does to your carpet, yeah. So that's life. I can probably deal with that. The BackBeat website says that the clips are comfortable. You won't even notice that they're there. It says something like that. But if you look closely at them, they they do sort of flick up, right? So they sort of go down and then they flick back up. Now, I don't know why they make such a confident claim that the clips are comfortable, you won't even know that they're there, because I previously had it attached to this leather part of this strap, which is not quite so padded. Okay, it's a bit more thin leather. And it was digging in. It was really quite uncomfortable. It really felt like someone was poking me in the back, not hard, but poking me with a screwdriver or something like that, right in the middle of my back. So I had to move it up to this part of the strap. And it's been comfortable here because, as you can see, it sits down. It's sort of sits flush with the padded stuff. So it's comfortable where it is. I don't have any worries with it here. But if you have a non-padded leather strap, I'm just not quite so convinced that it's going to be comfortable. So I just can't give you an absolute assurance. If you use a mono strap like this that's got padding in it, it's going to squish it down, but I think that will help it sort of submerge itself in the padding and you'll be okay. I don't know that I got a lot else to add. I mean, look, the other thing that I would say is, would I recommend it? And it's a funny answer that I've got to that question because it's quite a bit of money. Okay, for me in Australia, it cost me about $500 by the time we converted Australian currency to US, and I had to pay shipping to get it out here. So it's $500 Australian to get it out here. I may have even had customs fees. I can't quite remember. So that's a significant expense. You can buy some pretty cool pedals for $500 or even a bass. And if I was talking to 18-year-old me who, maybe only had one bass, would I say, well, get this before, instead of getting your second Mexican Fender Jazz? I don't know if I'd say that this is more essential than that, whether 18-year-old me would have gotten more enjoyment out of this rather than that. But what I can say is, since I've had it, I've used it at every single gig. And if I've started a gig, I play the first song and realize, I forgot to turn on the BackBeat. I'm stressed. I can't wait for that song to finish quick enough before I can turn it on. So I actually can't play without it anymore. So it's a funny recommendation for me because I wouldn't say everyone's absolutely got to have it, that it's a no-brainer purchase, especially at $500. But I can say that since I've had it, I don't want to leave home without it. I dread the day that I do forget it or that the battery dies. So I honestly don't want to play a gig without it. But it is expensive and it does have some, there are some features that aren't ideal that I'd love to see them fixed. But still, they're not so bad that I'm like reluctant to use it. They're just more improvements that maybe the manufacturer might consider with future versions. So I've got to say, on the whole, I think it was $500 well spent, and I'm glad to have it. And I don't really plan to do a gig without it. I'm actually probably going to start using this as my practice rig as well, because just before I recorded this video, I had a bit of a go with it, with the vibrating feature turned on and using it as basically just a headphone amp. You plug your headphones into here. You can control the volume with with one of the knobs, and it gave such a better feel to when you got a good pair of headphones and this on your back. It was way more enjoyable than using it without it. So you know what I'd say about this is that it's kind of like, I'll give you a comparison. I've never gone skydiving before, okay? And to be honest, I don't really have a huge desire to go skydiving. But I reckon if I met someone who goes skydiving regularly, they'd say, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. My God, you got to come. It is like awesome. I go every month and I can't live without doing it on a regular basis. And I'd be like, well, okay, maybe one day. But you know what the difference is? He's been skydiving and I never have. So perhaps I don't know what I'm missing out. And maybe if I went skydiving the first time, I'd be like, oh my God, why didn't anybody tell me about this? This is awesome. Well, I think the BackBeat's the same thing, that you're probably living quite happily without it. But I reckon if you tried it, if you did one full gig on it, it would probably change your approach to it. And you might be like me and be like, I can't live without it. So that is the BackBeat. I know it's not the most awesome review today, by the way. Like, it's mainly just me talking about it because I can't really, there's not much for me to demo with it. But what I am going to do, I'm going to plug it in, right? I'll show you a couple of things. We saw that when it's powered on, You get the blue light. Let's plug it into its 14-volt AC charger. Let's see what happens. It goes green. Don't even need to touch anything. There we go. You get a green light to show you that it's charging. Very nice. So like I said, what I do is you plug the bass into the black one. For me, I run a wireless unit. I'm not going to plug my whole wireless unit in, but just so you know, my wireless transmitter, the little pack that goes on my strap, goes into here. So we run straight from the bass into this one, straight out of there into the wireless transmitter, which then sends my signal down to my pedal board. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plug it in, and we're going to show you what I thought might be interesting for you is to see if you can hear what it sounds like. Because I wasn't making it up when I said that I believe it's got a speaker inside it and that I can actually hear. So let's turn it on. Now here's another sort of slight limitation is when you want to adjust it or turn it on, you got to flip your strap all the way around so you can get to it. And then there I go, whacking my bass on my desk. Awesome. Oh. And you can't always tell which knob is which. Maybe one other recommendation I'd say to the guys who make it is maybe use a different knob for each control. Like, so maybe use a round knob like you've done for this one, but then use like an octagonal knob for the other one. So that you just got to remember, okay, the round one controls the BackBeat, the octagonal one controls the volume. You know, like I'm talking about like the Fender jazz bass knobs, right? Something like that would really help you figure out which one is which. So if I put this up to the mic, can you hear that? So I probably got that cranked a little higher than you would have. You probably wouldn't drive it so hard. How would that feel? Anyway, hopefully you could hear that it actually does send pitch through the device and you feel that pitch through your bones. It's a pretty crazy feeling. I wish these were stocked in stores. You know, it's the sort of thing that if you could go in there, check it out, it would really help you decide whether you want it or not. But at the moment, you've got to buy it online, so you've just got to take a punt and see whether it's right for you or not. But for me, I'm very happy with it. I would say it's just right for someone who gigs a lot, needs to moderate their volume on stage. So this is a way that you can be more happy with your stage sound, your sort of presence on personal stage sound. And if you've sort of got most of the other gear, you know, if you're not really desperate to get a DI that you sort of absolutely have to have, or some sort of effect pedal that is absolutely necessary to the music you perform, then this is sort of a nice add-on. I don't think it's like you can gig without it, basically. But if you sort of want to enhance your enjoyment or your professionalism, then it's a nice little add-on. So that's my summary of it. I hope this has been helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you subscribe to the channel. Happy to take your questions down in the comments section.